Wow, thank you all for being here for the very last talk of the day. It's a marathon, and I have to be honest, this is my first talk, but I know you're dying to know, is independent consulting for you? And I am Barrie Jones Cook. About 20 years ago, I started Barrie Jones Cook Consulting LLC because I had some changes in life circumstance. So I'm here to give you my perspective on that. So what is consulting exactly for the purposes of this talk? Well, it can be anything from junior contracting, coding, or something like that, to expert network engineering services, or even management consulting. But the main thing is you're a hired hand, you're not a full-time employee. You work for yourself, and you have clients or customers rather than an employer. So even if you subcontract for another consultant, you still work for yourself. So why would you leave a full-time job, and why would this even come up? Well, sometimes it's not by choice. There's job market fluctuations, as we've seen, and you can have changing personal circumstances, like you need to start doing more caregiving, or you have health issues, or you have to move suddenly and you can't work remotely. So some people, they're ready to retire, they have the means, and they just want to change or more flexibility. They don't want to be completely done with network engineering because it's great, right? Maybe somebody's feeling entrepreneurial, you have an idea for a product, but you don't know where to start or how to support yourself while you're working on it. So what are the pros of this? Obviously, it's what we just talked about. It's a good backup plan for full-time employment drying up. You have much more freedom and flexibility. You can use your downtime between contracts to create new products or learn new skills, like Python or Go. You also earn a higher hourly rate typically than as a full-time employee if you divide your salary by the number of hours you're supposed to be working. But it comes with caveats. And one of them is you don't get benefits or a reliable salary. And as we were just talking, somebody earlier this week, it's feast or famine oftentimes. Also, every dollar you bring in equates to time you have to work, as opposed to selling a product or a subscription. Your consulting business that you need to set up also requires overhead, and that has nothing to do with your core offering. If you like doing network engineering, guess what? There's a lot of stuff you have to do that's not that. So you also probably need legal and financial advice. So I guess let's talk about that. I am not a lawyer, so it's my disclaimer. None of this can be construed as legal advice, so consider hiring one. What I did, though, back in the day, I read Nolo Press books on independent contracting and setting up LLCs, a limited liability company, if you don't know. And I drafted my own boilerplate contract and set up the LLC, and then I got a lawyer to review it all. When you set up your boilerplate contracts, you want to think about, even if you have a lawyer do it for you, you want to think about what kind of relationships do you want to have with your clients. Most of us would probably say you want them to be built on trust. But also, by the same token, you want your client to trust you, but how much do you want to trust that the company will stay the same if your known contact leaves? So you might want to build that into your contract. Do you want to do hourly rate, or do you want to do project-based consulting? The latter can be great if you want to try to get your foot in the door and they're balking at unending hours that are just going to be billed indefinitely. But on the other hand, if you underestimate how much time the project will take, you can find yourself working for hours that you don't get to bill for. Also, if you don't know what a retainer is, I didn't know what it was at first. I would just work and then bill at the end of the month for what I did. But a retainer can help you with planning, and it can also help your clients with budgeting. You can say, I'm going to work a set number of hours this month or every month, and you invoice for that at the first of the month, and then you work off those hours throughout the month. It can be easier to keep track of things that way. Also, you have to decide, do you trust them enough to do net 30? That's what most companies will want to do, which is you invoice on the first of the month or something, and then it's due in 30 days, that's net 30, or do you want to do payable upon receipt, and then you don't start working until you get the retainer. So for accounting, this is another thing you have to think about. You may need a separate business bank account, depending on what kind of structure you set up for your business. Is it an LLC? What does your state require? Because you want to keep your personal assets separate from your business activity, so that's all you have is in the business bank account. That's all you're liable for, and at least under California LLC. So that's not a bit of legal advice. Anyway, you have to consider how you're going to generate invoices. There's lots of options these days, actually, but back in the day, I just used GNU Cash because it was open source and I knew how to use it. I didn't want to pay for QuickBooks. And then also, when you get a tax accountant, consider whether they are they certified to do what you need them to do. So he won't do my LLC return because he's not certified for that. And I can't really ask him about what's a better structure tax-wise than sole proprietor, for example. Really important is to value your time. A lot of people undervalue their time and they think, oh, I can do that myself. I can do all these things. And then you're not billing for those hours. And maybe you could be, who knows? So consider outsourcing for that reason as well. And then things like a website or blog posts, whatever you're going to do for marketing, you can learn it yourself. It takes a lot of time. Ask me how I know. Or you can use things like LinkedIn or turnkey options. I know there's a lot of options. The big thing for a lot of people is, how do I set an hourly rate? And that's something I can't tell you because it's different for everybody. It depends on your skills and where you live, but research that as much as possible. You can look at Upwork or other, public places where people post their services. And then you get a baseline from that. And then you weigh that against your capacity. Are you really stressed out because you've got a lot of projects already? Maybe you raise your rate. Or what about the project at hand? Is this interesting to you? Are you going to learn a lot from it? You might take a lower rate because you want to get in there and work on that. And then later, when you renegotiate, then you're worth more. You can change. But it's going to be more than your full-time hourly rate, as I mentioned before. Like if you divide your salary working full-time by the hours you're supposed to be working, and you would charge more for that generally as a contractor because of business overhead. So networking is also very important, and I don't mean the second N in Nanog. It's all the people that you meet here when you come to these conferences, the conversations you have and contacts you make, and all the colleagues that have maybe come before you. I had a couple of people who did this before me, and they got me started and gave me advice and contacts for my first contracts and stuff. So it's really important. And if you can't make it to the conferences, there's obviously group workspaces like Slack, like Network to Code, Network Automation Forum. There's obviously Packet Pushers. I'm not on that one. Container Lab has a Discord, I think, and now I just learned and joined that we have a Nanog one. So I kind of was curious if there's any interest in a dedicated Slack or Discord, but now that I know there's Nanog, probably a channel or something. So is this for you? Only you can answer that. Obviously, your hourly rate can be really good, but there are caveats. So it's going to take research and outside help, possibly. So it's important to value your time when you do that, and when you decide on that, and then always be networking. So thank you. Please contact me if you have any input or on Discord server or anything like that. Any questions? Nope. Great, thank you. Oh.